Everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today. Andrés Ruzo is a National Geographic explorer and host of the award-winning Nat Geo Latin America show, Misterios del Inframundo, Mysteries of the Underworld. His work has been featured across Nat Geo platforms, including the channel, magazine, digital, and other media outlets. He's a geothermal scientist, conservationist, science communicator and educator who in 2011 became the first geoscientist granted the Shamanic blessing to study the sacred boiling river of the Amazon. He is the founder and director of the Boiling River Project, a nonprofit dedicated to understanding and protecting the Boiling River area by bringing together science, traditional Amazonian knowledge, and many other disciplines. Andrés holds a degree in geology and finance and will soon be receiving his geoscience PhD from Southern Methodist University. He is also a TED main stage speaker and a TED book author and has been featured on numerous major media outlets across the globe. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, and we're looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and everybody who's able to join us. This has been kind of a marathon with all of the craziness. So huge thanks to everyone who's making this happen, being able to be here. I'm going to share my screen, so fingers crossed this works. I'm going to rely on your thumbs up and thumbs down. It's going a little slow for me right now. I think this, all right. It's not working for me. Can you guys see it? Let's see.
Not yet.
Aaron, I hear you talking.
You can't see it yet.
Not yet. Let's check the security out again. That is bizarre. You know what? Let me try something. Sorry. How about now? Terrible.
No.
No?
No.
Oh, well. It's all right. We'll try this one more time. And if not, I'm going to sign out and then sign back in quickly. Sometimes it makes me be an admin. I don't know if you can do that just for the time being, and then I can switch it over.
You're a co-host right now. We've got you on co-hosting. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's so weird. This has not happened to me like this, and we did this all the time. But anyway, in the meantime, this is actually the first time this is happening to me like this. It's probably the new update with, Aaron, I lost you. But it doesn't matter. Worst case scenario, we'll talk through it. Let me log out and log back in just in case, okay? Yeah, just sorry about that, guys. One sec, technical difficulties. So
we are nothing if not flexible.
yeah, thank you. I'll be right back.
Sarah Cole's your apartment complex's landscaping crew has fantastic timing. Like, I just loved her. It's delightful.
The third time in 24 hours, they have now blown outside my windows.
Your window is clean.
Hopefully everybody can see me now. We tried that again. This is bizarre. I've done so many of these. This is the very first time my computer's not wanting to do this. And I think it might have to do with the new update for Apple systems. That's really weird. Okay, you know what? Whatever. I guess we'll have to continue rolling.
We can share your slides afterwards. If you want to email them to one of us, we can share them. You can, if it's a Google, you can do it in chat. We can figure it out.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to export this as a PDF real fast, and this PowerPoint, and then I'm going to send it over to Dustin. This is really strange. So yeah, I'm going to send this over to Dustin right now via Google Drive. Dustin, are you in the room right now?
Yep, I'm good.
Perfect. So I'm saving it as PDF. I'll send it to you right now. And I don't know if you can share the screen, but yeah, I mean, the only thing that I can think of is that I literally just updated my software this morning. So that's the only thing I can think of as to why this isn't working.
How was your walk today?
Good. But yeah, so it is loading right now, and hopefully we'll be sending your way. In the meantime, you know what? I'll dig into it. I wish you could see the visuals, but it's okay. You'll hopefully see everything soon. We'll just make it a lot more, Q&A based. So otherwise, can everyone see me, hear me okay? Because we're going to do it the old-fashioned way, I guess. Yes, no, maybe?
Yes, we can. Mm-hmm.
Okay, fantastic. This is so weird. Sorry, guys. But anyway, so my name's Andrés, and I am a National Geographic explorer. I am a geothermal scientist, so specifically working around volcanoes, geothermal systems, how we take Earth's heat energy and create green baseload power from that. That's a lot of what we do on the explorational side in particular. And that's taken me all over the world, frankly, looking at renewable resources, even as far as doing more unconventional things in the green energy space, like working with oil and gas companies on how to make that transition to a green energy future. I do a lot of work in science communication, as was mentioned, with TED and other groups. And well, we definitely right now, actually 2020 put a damper on it because we were supposed to film 13 episodes last year, but you can all imagine what happened. But for Misterios del Inframundo, it's a show on the Nat Geo Spanish channel. And what we do is we go to places that hopefully you think you know, right? So it could be Chichen Itza, it could be Teotihuacan. And the idea is we're taking new technology, looking at everything in a new way and digging into the mystery of what that is. By the way, Dustin, the PowerPoint should have sent. So hopefully we can, or the PDF, I'm sorry. So hopefully you'll be getting it shortly. Yeah, because again, the only thing I can think of as to why this isn't working is the update, because everything else should be in order. But yeah, so for example, when you see the PDF, you'll see, you will see Teotihuacan, right? This big, beautiful site in central Mexico near Mexico City. And we were, for example, studying this tunnel that was underneath the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent. And we were bringing in laser technology, looking at that and trying to understand, trying to look at this area in new ways. So my work's been featured across multiple platforms, as mentioned, and one of the things that I do most is educational work through National Geographic Learning and National Geographic Education. We have both of those arms, right? So at Nat Geo, we say that our mission is we want to inspire people to care about the planet, you know, and with Nat Geo Learning, we want to bring that world into the classroom because we want you kids, people in general, right, to study something real. You know, when I was learning to speak English, it was the you know, pollito, chicken, gallina, hen thing, which is a lot of fun, but like, how much more interesting is it if you're seeing something that really passions you? That's hopefully where we want to go with this. And as we move on, you know, whether you're learning in person or doing the distance learning thing, you know, I do want to say gracias, you know, big thank you to everybody for what you're doing. This group in particular has been unbelievably flexible, helpful in light of, I know a lot of people have been calling it Snowvid as well as COVID for Texas, and I thought that was hysterical. So let's call it Snowvid. So between COVID and Snowvid, thank you guys to all. I wish you could see the pictures right now. You will soon, because there is a picture of all of the ISEA board members. And I got to say a huge special thanks to this conference, because frankly, you guys, and particularly Dustin, you're not only saving my butt right now, but he saved the day big time. So long story short, you know, I'm the founder and director of this nonprofit in Peru. We're doing a lot of research looking at bringing value to the Amazon, including working with frogs, working with natural products. And we're working with the University of Michigan there and a university in Lima as well. And because we couldn't be in the field, I have a frog colony in my bathroom right now here in Dallas. And we lost power. Dustin didn't. So Dustin literally saved the day. Those frogs would have frozen to death if it wasn't for him. So I'm extra grateful to Dustin, extra grateful to this conference, because if not Dustin, I wouldn't have become friends. And now I owe him one, and I'm gonna figure out how to get all of you to the jungle. But are you guys able to see the PDF, Dustin? Were you able to open it yet? By the way?
Not yet. It is freezing my email, so hopefully I can get it here in a second.
It's all right, man. We're at 20, because perfectly, the next slide that I would have showed you was, you know, this wonderful meme of, if 2020 was a scented candle, I have an idea. And this is great, by the way. In fact, I'm embracing the fact that this is happening, because when we work with kids all the time, and we take students and teachers out to the Amazon all the time, and one of the biggest things that we try to show is, hey, we learn from our failures more so than our successes. And being able to, what's the word, MacGyver it up, right, and figure out solutions. Because right now what I'm thinking is, I'll put the slides on here, and then we'll do that way. And then I'm hoping that the rest of you, because I can't see half of your faces, right? I can see, you know, a picture of Danielle with her hat, for example, and Sarah Coles with a nice red sweatshirt with the beautiful beach in the background. But like, I'm hoping you guys are like, you know what, let's just roll with it. So I'm gonna start trying to load that PDF on here and see how that works in the meantime. Because this slide in particular would have been perfect. If you guys haven't seen it, it's one of a porta potty that's on fire. And it says, if 2020 were a scented candle. And that's kind of how I feel right now. So, and I'm not interested in Siri. Again, don't do the update, because don't do the update, especially if you're, new lesson, right? Especially if you're giving a presentation. But we are almost there. And anyway, so it's been a difficult year. This one, last one, it's been a pain. Let's be frank. With the Boiling River Project, I have to say there has been nothing easy about this year. We as a team do not have all the answers. And with this presentation, I did want to show a few things that have worked for us. So with the Boiling River Project, we have about, actually now it's closer to 15 educators working with us. They're Nat Geo certified explorers, and downloading the presentation now on the other computer. Nat Geo certified explorers, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too. And I wanted to show just some of the things that have worked. Because right now we're not only doing distance learning, but we're doing distance conservation work, distance research. And how does that? Oh, come on, computer. There we go. Finally. Oops. Hold on, guys. Just if it wasn't bad enough. Now my Bluetooth disconnected. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes. We can still hear you.
All right, we'll continue rolling with that. Almost there. And 3, 2. Okay, that lied to me. Okay, doesn't matter. We'll keep going. But yeah, so doing the distance work has been a challenge. And right now, you know, a big focus that we've had is, if empowerment was important before, the key takeaway for us, there we go, finally loaded. How about that? I'm literally holding this on my hand. So hopefully you can all see this. I'm going to turn down this light so you can see it a little better. Let's see if we can get the screen to focus. There we go. See, look, I even put like your little tattoo guy there, and then one of the native ones, you know, Mississippi and Amazonia coming together, because I love you guys. That's how it works. So there's the geoscience thing. You're going to have to pretend it's backwards. And again, geothermal power plant, again, conservation, science communication work there. Misterios del Inframundo, there's that crazy tunnel that I was talking to you guys about. Some of the Nat Geo stuff, the education stuff. Obviously, this is all backwards, but you know, some of the books are worth doing. Inspiring people to care about the planet, bringing the world into the classroom. Look at that. There you go. Distance learning or in-person learning. How about that? Thank you to all again. And Dustin, look, there you are. And there, that was a little lag time. And there's one of the frogs. You look how cute they are, seriously. And what's super cool about the frogs is that those frogs, that family, Phylomedusa, produces a natural waxy substance that they rub on their bodies. Not only serves as a sunscreen, but also as something antifungal and antimicrobial. And that is something that we are trying to figure out if there's any uses. And that's Dustin. He doesn't secrete anything weird, I don't think. But anyway, so we're trying to figure out if there's any uses that could help bring value to the Amazon. So there's 2020, and there's currently how I feel about my computer systems not working for the first time in the past 2 years. So right now, we know 2020 has been tough. We know 2021, and now we're all secretly hoping that 2022 doesn't get a little bit tougher right there. And there you go. So there's not been anything easy about this. We don't have all the answers, but I wanted to share some of the things that has worked for our team members. That's Becky Schnexer. She's a really good friend and one of our educators with the Boiling River Project. And again, how do we do this? How do we do distance learning, distance connecting with people, distance conservation? Because frankly, you know, this is depressing, but COVID has been horrible for the Amazon. It's been really, really tough. There's been less enforcement, more economic needs. So as a result, a lot more predation, and balancing this has been really, really tough. So we've got a team of over 50 people from all over the world, Peruvians, non-Peruvians, indigenous, non-indigenous. And, you know, it's trying to work with all of these groups across the board and truly dig into the reality of empowerment and stepping away from any sort of, parachute science, parachute work, drive-by education, whatever you want to call it, has kind of been a big focus of what we've been trying to do. This is my close partner, Karina. She's a leader in one of the Shipibo communities, because that's another thing. We've actually, sadly, we've lost a lot of people because of COVID as well. And that's going to be one of the great challenges of life post-COVID. And this is where you guys are going to be more important than absolutely ever. And I think this is the first time I'm saying this in an open forum like this. But look, between the insane predation that we've been seeing, across the jungle, and also the loss of a lot of our colleagues, sadly, 10 of our colleagues have died because of COVID. And a lot of those include, very close friends, very dear people to us, but also leaders in those communities. And they could have been, last week, the very close friend I've been working with for 10 years. He was a Shipibo shaman, leader in his community, really important guy. These are also cornerstones for our conservation and protection efforts. So did it work, Dustin? Hello?
Yes, we are ready to go. I'm going to go full screen, so just tell me when to advance.
Perfect. So yeah, if you could get to this one. Excellent. But so in light of that, I think one of the biggest things from a conservation standpoint that we're going to have to look at post-COVID is really starting to think about reprioritizing rewilding in developed nations, in the United States, in Europe, in areas where, like, we were about to buy a very large piece of land in the central Amazon, and about 25% of our budget was exclusively going into armed guards. When trees, depending on species and type, how big around they are, right, can run between $5,000 to $10,000 on the illegal markets, you need to protect them in more aggressive ways. When, one jaguar fang could run you between $80 to $120 on the illegal markets, again, how do you protect all that when the economy is not doing very well and people are trying to eat? So right now, I hope all of you, and again, this is messing up with all of my order for doing this presentation. So we'll take it more of a conversation. But the general takeaway is that all of you are in different parts of Texas. All of you are in a part of planet Earth. All of you have access to wild spaces. And at the end of the day, the United States represents one of the most deforested countries on planet Earth. How do we fix that problem? If most of the contamination is coming from the developed world, if we have students and teachers willing to start tackling this problem, even by, I don't know, in parts of Indonesia, for example, you can't graduate from high school without planting a tree, which I think is a fantastic idea. And that's not, there's other parts of the world that do that as well, in Africa, in some schools in Costa Rica as well. But yeah, I mean, how do we start rethinking about this? The Amazon will always be important, as will tropical forestry. Yes, that's the presentation. Thank you, Dustin. Saving the day all the time. God, I love you. Thank you. Seriously, we'd be in huge trouble. But yeah, if you could go to the next slide, please. But yeah, and that starts in the classroom, as you saw with the kids in that past picture. And again, most of our work here, just to give you a background, because you've heard a little bit about the Boiling River, the Boiling River is one of the most spectacular places on planet Earth. And again, the Amazon will always be important. It is one of the greatest celebrations of life. It is truly one of Earth's most amazing natural pharmacies, because, hey, you got this plant that gets more toxic so that the bug doesn't want to eat it anymore. Hey, but then the bug gets a little more resistant. The plants get more toxic. And that's been going on for a little bit over 50 million years in the Amazon basin. It's one of the, there was a proto-Amazon as well. So it's actually older than the river itself. But if you go to the next slide, please. The Boiling River is, too many. Boiling River is absolutely spectacular. It is one of the largest documented thermal rivers on the planet, and not associated with volcanism, even more curious. And it was thought to be a legend. So when I was a kid in Lima, my grandfather told me about this crazy story about the conquest of Peru, giant snakes that could swallow men whole, and giant spiders, all the cannibals, all that stuff. And one of the details was of a big mysterious river that boiled. thought to be a legend. I started my PhD. I started researching a little bit, helped the Peruvian government with a study looking at geothermal manifestations. And I started asking the question of, could this thing exist? And generally, the experts said no. And they said, some of them said, who knows, maybe. But I ended up asking my aunt, who used to do indigenous rights work, and it took 2 years before I was asking her, right? But she was like, no, Andrés, it exists. And she's like a huge joke. She's got the funniest personality. She's a huge joker, huge practical joker, right? And she's like, no, Andrés, it exists. I've swum in it. That's how she introduced me to it. And I'm sitting there like, really? You swum in a boiling river. And anyway, so then my very, very straight-laced, I mean, they're almost like a characters from a soap opera or something. She's very like all over the place. And my uncle's very straight-laced type. He's like, no, Andrés, seriously, like she's not kidding, and we went there. She did indigenous rights work and made friends with the wife of this really powerful shaman. And then next thing I knew, my aunt was leading me an hour by plane, 2 hours by road, another hour by motorized canoe, and then another hour hiking into the jungle to meet the shaman. And I met this guy, Maestro Juan Flores. And thanks to my aunt who led me to the shaman, I was able to get the blessing from the shaman and become the first geoscientist to study this amazing site. If you could go to the next slide, please. That's a drone shot from almost 1,000 feet up, and that is a wall of steam. Go to your kitchen. I should have had some coffee or tea with me, right? That would have been more on brand. But, but that is a wall of steam. That is a plume. Some of those trees are over 100 feet high. You're talking about nearly 4 miles of thermal flow, most of that hot enough to kill you. Above 117 degrees Fahrenheit, water starts to hurt and you start to cook. So the fact that the boiling river in places, next slide please, can get to, there's got spectacular waterfalls, but can get to over 200 degrees Fahrenheit is amazing. This site right here was about 175-ish. That's a 21-foot drop almost, that waterfall. I'm the little blue dot in the back in the picture. And that water, I mean, it's dangerously hot. This is a place of legends, of spirits, absolutely crazy, had never been documented before. Next slide, please. And it's huge. Again, widest point, wider than the 2-lane road. It can get up to almost 100 feet wide. And the deepest point, which you're seeing here, it can get almost to 15 feet deep. Next slide, please. Again, hottest temperature I measured was, well, pretty darn close to boiling. And this is actually, the elevation is very similar to Dallas, Texas. So you don't have to worry about, elevation messing things up. Next slide, please. And one of the most beautiful things for me, again, has been working so super closely with my indigenous colleagues and learning all about this place and also indigenous science. So in the West, we approach it in one way. There's other ways to approach it too. And one of the cool things is the name of this place. This should be a video where you could see a bubbling stretch of water that goes on for about 100 meters. Shanaitin Pishka, that's the name of this place, boiled with the heat of the sun. And I love that because frankly, that is a hypothesis. And if you don't know about geophysics and heat flow and all that crazy stuff, and in your best understanding of the universe, the sun is the ultimate source of heat, that's a logical hypothesis. And I think that's both poetic and beautiful. And the most inspiring thing about that for me is that I don't care if you're coming from a Western background, an Amazonian background, a traditional background. To be human is to be scientific. To be human is to make observations and try to come to logical conclusions. And that inspires the living daylight out of me. And I love that. Next slide, please. So we want to take stories with National Geographic like this, like the boiling river, and use them as gateways to curiosity. Next slide. And again, we do this with TED as well. And for any of the ESL teachers in the audience, Nat Geo and TED, we've got this really cool program, using TED Talks for English language learning and bringing together some Nat Geo stuff there. Next slide, please. And yeah, you can fast forward through that one. I want to make up for lost time. But as incredible as this jungle is, sadly, it's hugely under threat. And I talked about that a little bit before. In 2011, when I came in, again, from the nearest large city, 2 hours by 4x4, 1 hour by motorized canoe, in Peru, lovingly called Peque Peque. If you want to know why, you turn on the motor and it basically sounds like Peque 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 Peque, the world is funny. But That was in 2011. If you go to the next slide, you see something super depressing. We are in zone A. That's that little map with the colors over there, right? That is the most heavily hit areas on a regional scale for deforestation. Those trees, some of them were bigger around than your car is long, if you've got like a Honda Civic, for example. The white dots that you see in the background of that picture are cows. We are losing jungle at an alarming rate. In 2013, an illegal roadway started making its way into our area. By 2016, that roadway had manifested into mass swaths of deforestation. Next slide, please. In Peru, we're losing on average about, and sadly, these were pre-fire numbers and pre-COVID numbers. We were losing about half a soccer field every minute. Next slide, please. Across the Amazon during this time, we were losing about 2 soccer fields every minute. And across the planet, according to the Tropical Forest Loss study by the Global Forest Watch, we were losing about 30 soccer fields every single minute of forest. And that is shockingly unsustainable. The scariest part of that, I would put money that that has gotten a lot worse since COVID started. Next slide, please. So if our mission with the Boiling River is to understand, is to protect and to bring value. Next slide, to try to stop all this, because a lot of it's driven by economics. Ultimately, after nearly 10 years of working there, having been, threatened by illegal loggers or land traffickers, or even the crazy politician who was trying to throw me in jail because she was doing some really shady stuff. Didn't work though. I didn't go to jail, which was nice. We had other people that were higher ranking that helped out, thank goodness. Anyway, but conservation is an economics problem. And if we want to solve that issue of deforestation, so good for the entire planet, we need to start rethinking the way we do things. And that's what we're doing exactly right now. For example, the biggest thing that I think we've done in COVID, other than taking most of the money that we had raised with the Boiling River Project and throwing it at paying medical expenses to keep people alive, has been paying for English classes. Right now, we are training a lot of our Shipibo colleagues to speak English so that they can speak for themselves. Because right now there's been a bottleneck. I mean, there's cultural differences as far as like how to get someone from the Amazon to connect with someone, I don't know, in Seattle, first place that popped to mind. But we're working on it. We want them to speak with their own voice. It is more than about time. Next slide, please. Yeah, and that's Karina. Perfect. I forgot this slide was there. But yeah, that's Karina. So she's the one that's really, again, partner in this. And frankly, hopefully, once all this craziness is over, you should be seeing a lot of cool stuff coming out of our working group. She runs a school called ISEA, which is I help out with them as well. It's a classic Shipibo school, because one of the things that, sadly, this is one of our colleagues, she's a Shipibo shamaness. The guy who trained her, the older gentleman who sadly lost his life about 2 weeks ago to COVID, he really laid down a lot of the conservation understanding for us as far as how we can make an actual pragmatic change. And he would say, his name was Maestro Antonio Munoz, the number one thing he would say is, if you guys really want to make a difference, you need to understand that the greatest threat to the jungle are the natives that have forgotten that they're natives. What does that mean, he would say? It means that you know how to hunt the animal, you know what plant is valuable, you know what tree is valuable, how to disappear from the enforcement officers, and how to poach all this stuff. You know that, but you've forgotten that deeper connection. So what Maestro Antonio believed very strongly in was education and reconnecting people to traditional values that have sadly been lost in globalization. And that's what we're trying to continue with his mission. And next slide, please. So this is another one of our amazing colleagues, Maestro Juan Flores, who, again, similar story. I'm going to try to fast forward because technical difficulties killed a lot of our time here. But he's another one of our very close colleagues, amazing guy. Hope you guys meet him soon too. COVID go away. Next slide, please. But one thing that Maestro Juan, the guy you just saw in the last picture, always says, and again, he's another of a long line of curanderos, of healers in the Amazon, is there's a basic axiomatic principle to what they do. And where there's an ailment, there is also a cure. And this is a big part of what we're trying to do in adapting to all this craziness with COVID or technical difficulties or everything, right? And it's just looking at things in a different light. So if you could keep going. Next slide. For example, we learn about the stars. We learn about the constellations. We learn about piecing points of light to make figures. Next slide, please. Not all cultures do that. In fact, other cultures, they look at the dark spots in the Milky Way, the dark constellations. There's a lot of stories about these. I'm just looking at the time. Dustin, can we go next slide? I'm going to have to go really fast, but it's all about perspective. Next slide. New perspectives, for example, depth perception. This is one of the things that makes us human, right? We know that both of our eyes are at the front of our head instead of the sides. Why? Because we need to understand depth. Next slide, please. Because we're trying to build a better tomorrow today. We're going to have to go really fast on the slides, Dustin. Sorry, man. Just keep going. Every time I do this, we can do a slide. But parallax error is one of the most important things that I tell my students. The idea is, what's your margin of error that comes from your perspective? Next slide. Everyone do this. I can't see all of you. We're going to have to go super fast. Put your thumb on the end of your nose. Everyone look at the top of your finger. And now close one eye and close the other. Looking at the tip of your finger. Your finger stays still. Very good, Ms. Lopata. I see you doing it. Wonderful. Thank you. But your finger doesn't move. It stays in XYZ space, but it goes back and forth. That's parallax error. Next slide, please. If we want to build a better today, we have to understand those biases. Next slide. Those sources of error. Next slide. To get those perspectives. And if we want to educate and prepare students, next slide, for realities that might not exist yet, next slide, we have to be particularly aware of all of this craziness. So we wanted to, what we have been trying to do is develop living learning functions rather than walking libraries. That's kind of our goal, because nowadays you can have 20 PhDs for all I care. If I ask you the right question, I am one Google search away from proving you wrong, you know, like, and that's a dangerous thing if you want to go by the old method. Next slide, please. So connecting, seeing the classroom as where culture starts these days. Next slide, please. Because in a lot of places, sadly, you know, working parents have to work. So now my mom was a teacher. I've been a teacher. I've got 8 teachers in the family. And a lot of, you know, one of the biggest challenges I hear is, you know, it's the hardest thing about being an educator is that you're not just teacher, but many times you're also mom and dad or psychologist or friend or supporter. And that is something that we need to embrace. I feel for a long time, it hasn't fully been embraced or at least honored. But if you want an example that culture changes in the classroom, look at cigarettes, look at seatbelts, look at litter. There's a whole bunch of other things we could get to too, but look at those 3 things. Before, no one used to buckle up in a car. We learned about it in school. Now everybody buckles up. Same thing with litter. In the case of cigarettes, my dad used to smoke. When my sister was little, she learned that smoking could cause cancer in school. She started breaking all of his cigarettes, leaving notes saying, "Dad, I don't want you to die. I love you," you know. I promise you that got him to stop smoking 1,000,000 times faster than the tax hikes or no, you can't smoke within 20 feet of the building or whatever. The power that you guys have, even with informal education in any classroom setting, is amazing. Next slide, please. And especially now when we're trying to bring together rifts, we need that understanding of multiple perspectives. We need to open up dialogues. Next slide, please. As much as possible. So I think that understanding of parallax error, how we can, next slide, is fantastic. If we had more time, we would do an entire section on this, but long story short, those 3 shadows are the same sculpture. Google shadow sculptures. It is one of my favorite art forms ever. Those 3 shadows, same thing. Next slide, please. This guy did an amazing job piecing together this thing with Lego. And depending on where the light source hits, that can be, next slide, it comes out either a jet, next slide, sorry. There we go. Next, jet, a butterfly, or a dragon. Same sculpture. It's that part of the elephant, right? It's taking it to a new level. And there is a deep power in perspective. You know, and I think that's something we need to embrace more. Next slide. Part of the new perspectives is we make it an active point pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID, right? To take students and teachers into the field. Next slide. And also opening it up to their parents. That guy is the dad of the girl. Next slide. So it's interesting. When we get to the Amazon, for example, one of the things that I always enjoy seeing is my Amazonian students talking to my non-Amazonian students. And for example, one of them was saying, oh, it was one of the American students was saying, it was my dream to go to the Amazon. The response of one of the Amazonian students is, well, it's my dream to go to Dubai. I want to see the huge buildings. I want to see the skyscrapers. Next slide. Because at the end of the day, humans are humans and we want to learn, we value what the other one has, right? We want to learn from each other, and anything that we can do to open up those opportunities for people to interact and learn from each other, it's pretty amazing. Next slide. I know we've got like 2 minutes left, so we're going to have to plow through this because ultimately humans, we're a part of nature. And I think that's why we love it so much. I don't care. Like the fact that this is actually the shaman's granddaughter. That was her first time interacting with a praying mantis, and she lives in the jungle. She was amazed, but so was my student from here. This is a high school student from here in Dallas, Texas. It was so inspiring to see, and I love the fact that we evolved in nature. We're part of nature, and I think that's why it calls to us so much. So anyway, that next slide, please. Cursed time, right? But it's interesting. And again, I go back to why you guys are so important, why I truly honestly believe you guys are on the front lines of global conservation and fighting the climate crisis as much as where you are, wherever you are in Texas, as we are in the Amazon. Because if I go into Brazil or Peru or wherever, and I'll see, hey, you know, pristine jungle, a road, and then development. Next slide, please. To be global is the sum of all local. We forget about that. And the last time I flew into Dallas, guess what I saw? I flew in and I saw areas of pristine land, a road, and hey, development. Next slide, please. There you go. It's not that different. It's the same processes because ultimately we're all people. It's the same. It's just a lot of the same processes, a lot of the same desires, and a lot of the same human needs and wants channeling this. Next slide, please. The US remains one of the greatest examples of deforestation on the planet. Just go to Google Earth and look at all of those grids. Those grids are not natural. They're not pixelated. Do it yourself. Go on your computer, use your phone, use whatever. There was a point where they said a squirrel could jump from the East Coast to the West Coast from tree to tree across the northern United States. That's not the case anymore. Next slide, please. So wherever you are, do what you can, when you can, and where you can. And that's what we've been pushing. Next slide. Because one of these is the Amazon, and the other one is, one's near the Amazon River, one's near the Mississippi River. The question is, guess which is which? Because in the battle for the planet, every battlefield counts. And right now we're dealing with a global crisis. Next slide. Mississippi, for example, I get asked all the time, where do you see the future of Amazonia? Sadly, I think if you want the best proxy for what the Amazon's going to look like in 50 to 100 years, check out Mississippi. Ever heard of it? Mississippi? Maybe. I've heard of the Mississippi River. I've heard of the Delta. But it's super similar. These are both places that had major population centers, huge mound cities, crazy oxbow lakes, amazing animals, and incredible biodiversity. One is still intact. The other one has had its cultures eliminated for all intents and purposes. Most of its flora and fauna, well, pretty devastated, and you can put two and two together. Next slide. And right now, actually, part of the work that we're doing is actually teaming up with groups working in Mississippi, and we're actually jokingly calling our initiative Amazonia plus Mississippi. And well, Amazipia just kind of sounds funny, and right now we're desperate to laugh. And so, but yeah, one of the things that we're working with is Yaupon tea, and this is really, really cool. Here in Dallas, I actually have a Yaupon plant in my backyard. I had no clue that was America's native caffeine source. It's one of the most delicious teas ever. I'm working with a group called Yaupon Brothers, and also Yazoo Yaupon, which is kind of an offshoot of that, to take Yaupon and sort of bring it to the mainstream, seeing what connections we can do between Amazonia and Mississippi. And anyway, if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend you check it out, because it is an amazing story about how ultimately the British East India Company was like, we don't like the fact that these colonials might have a product that'll give us some competition with our tea. So check it out more. Really delicious tea. And yeah, Yaupon Brothers, really interesting group.
Next slide, please. So wherever you are, your background, your backyard really does matter. It could be in the boiling river of the Amazon, in South Texas, or anywhere else. Next slide. Because there is a hidden frontier, even here in the United States. I've had two things go viral in my career, which a lot of people like to talk about going viral. Very few people talk about how absolutely exhausting it is. You know, the millions of hits, the phone off the hook, the more email, everything blowing up, every messaging system you can possibly get. And it was interesting. The two things that I've had go viral in my career, first one was a boiling river. Makes sense. Okay, the Amazon, cool. And a lot of my students are like, oh, I can only you know, discover something cool or experience something amazing in the Amazon, the Serengeti, Antarctica. That's not true. That picture was part of the other story that went viral, and it was titled Gar in Fence. We had a flood in Dallas. The water levels came up to here. I went to a high school. I went to my old high school because I went to high school here in Dallas. And there were about 7 or so of these long nose or needle nose gar, about 3 feet long, stuck in the fences. These things have been swimming around, their ancestors anyway, since the time of the dinosaurs, right? There's a hidden frontier here. This used to be the Wild West. This used to be this used to be America's Amazon, the Mississippi River Basin at the end of the day. I know this is part of the Trinity River Basin, but you get what I mean. Next slide. I'm having to talk fast, forgive me. So what we're trying to do with all of this is make it relevant. Connect people to their backyard. Use the stuff that we're doing in the Amazon with the field books or whatever and say, hey, this works in the Amazon. It also works in your backyard. It's important there. It'll help you discover things for us in the Amazon, but also for you here. So we're trying to bridge that gap. And that's been one of the positive things coming out of our adapting to COVID, that more than ever before, we're reaching back. And now it's even in our Amazonian conservation, it's really more of a dual partnership between Mississippi and Amazonia. Next question. Sorry, slide. If you want more stuff as far as how reaching people and as far as anywhere we can, you can check out some stuff with Duolingo with the Boiling River. Next slide. This one, we can do these next ones really fast. Did a lot of work with Lego. You can check that out. Just Google. I know Lego is amazing. And we have this really cool program. Next slide. You can go through these really fast. Lego City Jungle. Next slide. Kids learn best when they teach. So most kids have their, yes, you can stop on that one. Most kids have their cameras. A lot of people have their individual Legos. And you learn best when you teach. So if you say, hey, show me, I don't know, where do you find circles if you're dealing with young kids learning about circles and squares? Next slide, please. They can take pictures of their Lego, and all they need is their imagination, their feet, hopefully getting around to amazing places outdoors, right? And their phones. Next slide. And it's been one of our most successful things. Really silly. Again, I wanted to give you something really concrete as far as something that's worked great. And this is, we had with Nat Geo Learning, we had yes, Lego said Lego, that's funny. But the teachers loved it too. So we had teachers, you know, getting out to the Dallas Zoo, taking all these pictures and teaching Lego lessons through their imagery. The kids loved it. Then the entire critiquing part of that exercise was, so what do you like about this picture? How could you have taught this, you know, more efficiently? Next slide, please. And some of the teachers really liked it, actually, as you can see. So we are pretty much over on time. So I'll just pause with this one, and then Dustin, you're welcome to, you know, send this out. But there's three other little exercises that have gone really well for our educators in our group. The first one was family interviews. If you can't move very much, there's a lot of communication, a lot of good stuff going in, you know, at home. We all have amazing stories in our families. So having students interview their elders, just like we would ask our Amazonian students to interview their elders, we've been asking some of our American students to interview their elders to hear about where the family originally came from. How did it, for example, you know, great-great-grandmother, you know, live through the Spanish flu pandemic? How was that? So looking for any family stories. So using that as a vector for education and communication there. The backyard biodiversity was another slide that you'll see there. The Seek app, if you guys don't know it, Seek by iNaturalist, done in collaboration with National Geographic and the California Institute of Science, is absolutely phenomenal. Check that out. And then also Dustin's going to send you the PDF so you can see all these. But with nationalgeographic.org, we've got some amazing resources for teachers and educators. Yeah, so you can find that online, and that includes the Nat Geo Educator Certification Program, which if you're not aware of it, ooh, please check it out, because that opens the door for you to apply for grants from National Geographic. Because right now, basically, oh, there you go. Thank you, Dustin. That's he was trying to kick me off in a subtle way. He was like, "That's a bye-bye slide." Okay, if you want me to go, Dustin, you can tell me. No, I'm kidding. But if you can go up a few, tick, 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 back some slides. The one Nat Geo Certified Educator one, that's the one. Yep, that's it. So if you guys can check this one out, I strongly suggest you do. Right now, almost all of our grant programs for research have actually been paused at National Geographic. There's still some, but most of them paused because the huge focus right now is on educators and how do we support you guys. Check out the Nat Geo Educator Certification. It's free. It can take anywhere between 18 to 24 hours. And what's super cool about it is once you get into that fold, you're eligible to apply for a whole bunch of amazing opportunities through National Geographic. Next slide, please. Including the Grosvenor Teacher Fellowship, which once we get travel up and running, you see that big ship in the background? Those are the Lindblad Nat Geo expeditions, and they are phenomenal. And they leave spaces for educators. You do have to do curriculum for it, but it's scholarship. You're basically covered expense-wise, and you get to go out to amazing places, collaborate with Nat Geo explorers, and come up with lessons that you're taking back into your classroom. So that I don't want to take away any more time because I know we're late, but long story short, I think you get the picture. Where you are matters. How do we help and empower each other? And well, at the end of the day, where there's an ailment, there's also a cure. And I truly believe that everyone here's a part of that cure. So thank you. Gracias. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but hey, it's 2020/2021. What can you expect? So connect with Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Easiest ways to get a hold of me, particularly Instagram. Facebook Messenger is doing some weird things. And yeah, Instagram's the best way to get in touch with me. Ta-da. Thanks, guys.
We have a couple questions in the chat if you have some time.
Of course.
So the first one is from Liz, and she asks, is there a magical resource that has earth science terms in English and Spanish?
There are. So if you go to NatGeo. Sorry, Dustin, could you open up the if you go to nationalgeographic.org, and there's a part that says education, and once you click on that tab, it says bring National Geographic resources into your classroom. And there is a huge list, and they keep updating it every day. So they should have a lot there. And if not, there's National Geographic Learning has other resources that I'm sure they can send you samples of. There's a guy named Jimmy Wiseman that I can, he would be a really good contact. I can, you know what, I'm going to post his email address. Jimmy Wiseman, gotcha. I'm gonna post a few email addresses from our team as well, from Nat Geo Cengage Learning. So if you guys have any question about specifics, oops, okay. I think this might have only gone to Sarah Coles for some reason. Yes, it did. There we go. Sorry. Here, I'm gonna post a few email addresses that you guys can just email part of our team at Nat Geo Cengage Learning. And if you want something that you can't find on the website, they would be really good resources to help you with that specifically. All right. One more.
And then we have one more question from Danielle, which says, I've heard you have an adorable bearded dragon. Can we see it?
The bearded dragon is upstairs. And thank you. Yeah, that's so funny. So we have the bearded dragons upstairs. But if you want to hear another reason why I'm a huge fan of Dustin and why he has saved the day, I can show you another little animal that he actually helped me understand. So Snowvid also brought orphan squirrels into our lives. And now there's two of them actually. So I don't know if you can hear her. but she's not happy about not being warm. But they're pretty cute. And so that's the female, and then this is the male. He's a little more sleepy right now, but there's the bearded dragon's upstairs, so I can't show you guys him right now. But another thing I can show you is, oh, this is kind of fun too. Again, that tank you see right there. Okay, I can't move the tank and I can't really move the desktop, but there's shrimp. You know what? I can take a picture and I went to a fish store. We have fish, and I needed to buy some things for the shrimp, and I have a 3-year-old, and we were at this. It's called Fish Gallery. It's on Inwood in Dallas, if you guys know it. It's a really cool fish store, and my 3-year-old was not terribly impressed with the fish for some reason. He was doing, oh, okay, fish, cool, whatever. And then he got to this little tank, and he just goes, oh, papi, están volando, dad, they're flying. And I was like, what is he talking about? So I see it. It's a bunch of shrimp, and it's just shrimp swimming. And he basically freaked out so much with the shrimp that were swimming that the entire store basically gathered around watching this little like toddler, you know, enjoying the shrimp so much so that they gave him a bunch of shrimp, and now they've been reproducing. And now I have a lot of very small shrimp. So anyone in the DFW area wants shrimp, let me know. We can, very happy to help them. So, and also if you get that Nat Geo educator certification, you can reach out and hopefully we can get you to the jungle too. The auction items, shrimp, yeah, going once, going twice. But yeah, any other questions?
I think that was all that was in the chat. Thank you so much for presenting today. We really appreciate it, and are really thankful for your time. I am going to put a link to the evaluation in the chat in just a moment, and then our next speaker will be at 2:15.
Thank you guys so much for your time, truly, and I apologize for the technical difficulties, but warn the speakers not to do the Mac update. For some reason, it's not liking Zoom. Oh well. I'll talk to you guys soon, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Andres.